Good morning. Today on Spotlight, getting ready for the 2022 Michigan primary election. What races are at stake, which candidates are in the lead, and why is the first leg of the campaign process so important for the matchups in November? I'll ask veteran political pundit Bill Ballinger, founder of the Ballinger Report, and longtime political poster Ed Sarpolis, executive director of Target Insight. It's Sunday, July the 31st. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Bill Ballinger, thanks for joining me today on Spotlight. Always good talking to you. Okay, Bill, at the risk of making sure that neither one of us come off as young whippersnappers, let me take you back. 1998. Do you see any parallels between what's happening today with Republicans running for governor and what happened to Democrats when we had Jeffrey Feiger going up against Larry Owen and Doug Ross, unconventional candidate? Feiger won and then got walloped in the general by incumbent John Engler, I think about 62% to about 37%, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think there is somewhat of an analogy. I think you hit the nail on the head. I doubt that the Republican nominee is going to do as badly as Feiger did once he was nominated in 1998. I could be wrong. It depends on who the nominee is. Mm-hmm. I think if Tudor Dixon wins the Republican nomination, she has a chance to make a race of it. But I think any of the four male candidates, if they're nominated, would have a tough time against Whitmer. I doubt that it would be as bad as it was between Engler and Feiger, but we'll find out.
Sure. Why do you think Tudor Dixon would be the best matchup for Governor Whitmer, who's got a million sitting there in her war chest waiting to go up against whoever comes out of this GOP primary?
Because she's a female, and so I think she takes that arrow out of Whitmer's quiver that I think Whitmer could use against a male candidate on a number of issues. As far as money is concerned, you're absolutely right. Tudor Dixon starting out, if she was the nominee, would not be able to compete with Gretchen Whitmer on money. But if the national Republicans or outside political action committee groups get involved in the Michigan Republican candidacy and race in the fall against Whitmer, and Dixon can either match or come close to what Whitmer is able to spend, I think it could be a real race, particularly if it's what is thought by many to be a red wave year. We don't know whether it's going to be a red wave year in Michigan or not. I don't think it will be, but in many other states, probably it will.
Okay, you don't think so? Because a lot of times in the midterm, the party that's not in the White House does very well.
Exactly. That's why I think, particularly with history on its side in that respect, as you mentioned, plus you've got these issues right now that are working very badly against the Democrats, particularly inflation, law enforcement, that sort of thing, that the Republicans can take advantage of, on top of the fact that they are the out party, which generally gains seats in Congress and does well in statewide races in non-presidential years.
Sure. Depending on which poll you look at, because the five Republicans that are going to be on the primary ballot are all bunched up there. It was perceived at least a week or so ago that Tudor Dixon was the front runner. Now Rinke is saying he's the front runner. And of course, you've got Sedano and others saying, hey, we're within striking distance, so you can't count anybody out of this particular race. They're really bunched up there, and it may be a late night for us on primary election night.
Absolutely. I think Rinke and Dixon are the only two of the five candidates that have the money to spend right now going into the final weekend and into Tuesday. And so I tend to think that even though Soldano and Kelly are within striking distance, as you say, that is probably going to be either Rinke or Dixon. And got to remember, the National Democratic Governors Association is putting money into this race against Dixon. They're running negative ads against Dixon. They are afraid of her as the nominee. So is Gretchen Whitmer. So they're trying to take her down. And meanwhile, Rinke is attacking Dixon with hundreds of thousands of negative ads.
James Craig, he still says he's the write-in. You've watched a lot of politics over the years, and you've seen write-ins. What's the chance of him winning as a write-in candidate statewide?
Zero, Chuck. I hate to say it, but maybe James Craig thinks he can pull a page out of Mike Duggan's book back in 2013. Remember, Mike Duggan won a primary against a huge field of Democrats on a write-in campaign in the August primary, which nobody thought could be done. But that was in the city of Detroit.
Right.
And I know it's
and
a
he
big
was a well-known
city,
candidate in the city.
But it's not the state of Michigan, you know?
Right. All right, we need to take a real quick break. When we come back, let's talk about the Trump factor, whether or not it's going to be a factor. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight, talking to Bill Ballinger of the Ballinger Report. All right, Michigan has a history, whether it's presidential races, gubernatorial races, you name it. We're rather schizophrenic at times. 1972, George Wallace won the Democratic primary. 1998, Jesse Jackson. Bill, all of the GOP candidates want the endorsement of Donald Trump. Do you think it's coming?
That's the $64,000 question. Is Trump finally going to endorse somebody? He's running out of time, Chuck. I mean, the election is next Tuesday.
Right.
And all these other races around the country where Trump has weighed in, he's made his endorsement well known long before now. I tend to think he's not going to do anything if he's waited this late. I could be wrong. You never know with Donald Trump. But I think there was a chance that he could have endorsed Tudor Dixon, and he liked her, I think, and he still likes her as a candidate. But here's the big issue. She is being backed by the DeVos family. And you may remember that Betsy DeVos was Donald Trump's Secretary of Education.
Right.
But in the turbulent days around the January 6, 2021 riot at the Capitol, she actually met with a group of people talking about invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Donald Trump from office. Mm-hmm. And she also resigned from the cabinet. So his feelings toward Betsy DeVos, I don't think are very positive right now. He doesn't like what he perceives as disloyalty. And the fact that she is endorsing Tudor Dixon, I don't think he wants to get involved with anybody being endorsed by the DeVos family right now.
And Donald Trump likes to pick a winner. Are these candidates too bunched up and he can't quite tell which one's going to emerge as the winner and he doesn't want to pick the wrong horse?
I think that is very valid. And I think he, for the reason that we discussed earlier, Tudor Dixon is surging in the polls, looks like she may be ahead. He might have come in at a dramatic moment a week or two out from the election and say, I want to get on the winning horse. And I think Tudor Dixon's going to win, and that'll make me, Donald Trump, look better. But then Rinke started coming up in the polls, so it's neck and neck. And then you've got the issue of Betsy DeVos as a backer of Tudor Dixon. And I've just got the feeling, again, Donald Trump has not consulted with me, Chuck. I got to tell you that.
You're kidding.
I'm guessing that he's decided I'm going to sit this one out.
Mm-hmm. What do you make, and this is the final question, what do you make of the fact that the National Republican Party has told Donald Trump that if you announce for president before the primary, then they aren't going to pay any more of your legal bills?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, there are a lot of people in the Republican Party upset that Donald Trump may muck around so much. in the primaries and the general election this year, and maybe even announce that he's running for president again in 2024, that it eclipses the focus that the Republicans want to have on Joe Biden and his negative ratings and their natural advantage historically going into a non-presidential term election. They want all the focus to be on inflation, on law enforcement, foreign policy, all the things where they feel they can win this race across the board, nationally, state by state. And if Donald Trump makes it all about him, rather than about the things the Republican Party cares about, that can only hurt the Republican cause going into November.
Bill, very quickly, someone said to me the other day, they said if John Engler were running in Michigan today, he would be considered a rhino by the Michigan Republican Party. You agree or disagree, and what in the world has changed?
Oh my gosh, Chuck, I mean, I hate to say it, but you're old enough to remember a governor named William Milliken.
Yeah.
Okay, now there was somebody who was today considered the ultimate rhino for a Republican Party. And John Engler was viewed as kind of the right wing of the Republican Party back in the 1970s and early 80s. Mm-hmm. And now, all of a sudden, we've got a totally new ballgame with the party moving so much to the right that Engler himself is looking like the Milliken of 2022.
All right, Bill Ballinger, always good talking to you. We'll see what happens on primary election day. We hear the dog backing in the background. Don't feel bad. Last time I interviewed President Biden, his dog was barking in the background too. So you're in good company. Coming up.
Sorry about that, Chuck.
No problem at all. It just means that you love dogs and people love dogs. We appreciate it. And coming up, we'll talk to pollster Ed Sarpolis about these congressional races that are getting a lot of attention. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is Ed Sarpolis, pollster based in Lansing with Target Insight, the executive director. Ed, good seeing you again. You doing okay?
We're doing okay. I can't believe it's been almost 30 years now. We've been talking to each other.
Between you and Bill Ballinger, you guys are really dating me today.
Well, I know.
That's okay. That's all right. Hey,
Bill,
it just means we've been around the block a few times. All right.
This is my 50th year of doing polling, so it's been a long time.
Okay, that's why I'm talking to you, for that long-range insight. The congressional races, the voters are being bombarded with television ads, radio ads, print campaign literature coming in for some of the most interesting congressional races in the primary we've seen in a long time. The 10th district, the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and our neck of the woods here. Is this the result of redistricting, or is this just a result of a whole lot of, let's say, people with very positive attitudes that they can win in the democratic process?
Two things. One, they believe that they can win. Number two, their campaigns tell them that people don't know who they are. And number three, they're so close on the issues, they got to attack each other to make a distinction. Now, in the 13th congressional district, you have 60% of the votes could be female. So you've got all these men fighting each other, which benefits the female voter candidate like Portia or McPhail, that type of thing. So it's coming down to, why are they running it? Because people don't know who they are.
Right. All right. You've done some polling. Tell us what you've seen in your polling and some interpretation into why we're seeing the type of numbers we're seeing.
Very quickly, I think the 11th district, the pro-Israel group, conservative group, is backing Haley Stevens. They spent $6-7 million in that race. Andy Levin obviously is Jewish. He's from that area. But the advantage is Haley Stevens because of the investment of time and energy, and he cannot compete. That's what's going on. The interesting thing there is the fact they're talking about issues other than Israel. They're talking about how great Haley is. And the 10th congressional district, that's Kara Malinga versus Angela Rosenzuss and Steve Yanich, and there's Rhonda Paul, which is doing a great job. Marlinga should pull that out There again, he has a history in the county. They know him. He has a history, and he's getting a lot of endorsements from Governor Bansler to community leaders. In the 12th congressional district, you have tough races going on between Garrett, you have Janice Winfrey, Chanel Jackson, Rashida Tlaib. The difficulty, Rashida has the money and the name recognition. It could be close for Rashida this time because of the money being spent on behalf of Janice Winfrey, millions of dollars, but Rashida should pull that out just because she's been around the block for a long time. The 13th district is where it gets a lot of fun, okay? Because
and a boatload of candidates.
boatload of money. Right now, very quickly for your viewers, the fact is Cherie Calendar has a slight lead of 22%. Portia Robeson is at 17%, and Adam Ollier is at 16%, and the rest follow down the list. What's important here is that Portia Robeson and Adam Ollier are very little known about them. Their name recognition is very low. Cherie has started her race 90 days sooner than either one. The candidate, what's going to determine this race is how many people got their votes in early on absentee ballot. Because we're finding in Detroit, like across the state, the absentee ballots are not coming in. So because there's nothing at the top of the ticket for Democrats, there's nothing motivating them. So if those who got in, so Cherie and I call them advantage. The more people who vote on poll election day, Portia Robeson is the beneficiary of more people that vote on election day.
And I keep hearing that the 13th congressional district race may be the most expensive congressional race in Michigan history, with the money that Sri Tanadar is spending. They say he may have about $5 million that he's spending on the air, and then of course the PACs behind Ollier.
I'm looking at close to $20 million being spent across all candidates, hard and soft dollars. It's very expensive for a Democratic primary. You and I have been around for a long time. Normally, people don't spend money in this particular district because they're saving the money for the general election, because this is going to be a Democratic seat no matter what happens in the primary. This is a distinction of who they want to represent them.
Whether it's the 12th district or the 13th district, what do you make of the fact that when all is said and done, you could very well have, I mean, you've got people of color in all these races, but you could very well not have an African American representing the 12th or the 13th district in districts that historically have been well represented by African Americans. John Conyers, was in Washington for life. What do you make of
Patrick and so forth? Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, if you remember an interview you did with me last October, basically, it's my impression is there was racial gerrymandering, blacks being used to succeed a political purpose by the redistricting commission, to more concerned about partisan politics, of making one party equal to the other versus protecting the largest community of interest, which is the black community in Michigan. You see that in the Senate and the House. This is by racial gerrymandering by the commission to ignore the fact that the blacks are being split up and may not be represented in Congress.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break. We'll come right back with some more questions as we look at these congressional races. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Ed, very quickly, in the 10th district, you got Carl Marlinga, a well-known name. He's got 4 other Democrats going up against him. Of course, you got John James over on the Republican side, another well-known name. He's run for a couple high-profile races. Hasn't been victorious yet, but certainly people know who he is now. What do you think the chances are that that's going to be the matchup in the general, Marlinga versus James?
I think it's 100% guaranteed. That's where the money is going right now, both on Republicans and Democrats. The strategy from the DCCC to RCCC is all focused on that race. The question is, it could be a boatload of money in that race if one side or the other keeps it very close. So yes, it's going to be Marlinga versus John James.
Let's go back to the 11th district with Andy Levin versus Haley Stevens. Fascinating race. I remember interviewing both of them early on in this primary process, and they said that that they weren't going to attack each other, that it was going to be two people who historically have voted very similar, and great respect among the two of them. The gloves have totally come off.
Well, it has come off because you have an institutional name called Sandy Levin and Andy Levin who've been representing that district for many, many decades. We have to say decades here, not just years.
Is the Levin name
What's
losing its clout in Michigan?
No, it's a demographic change. You're a much younger voter. What's hard to believe the fact that many of the younger Democratic voters view as Andy Levin as a grandfather because he's over 60. We view him as young because of we know his dad. So he's not reaching the younger Democratic voter. That race is going to be largely female voters in the primary. And also you have Brenda Lawrence backing Haley Stevens. You have a lot of institutions backing Haley Stevens over Andy Levin.
All right. I talked to Bill Ballinger a lot about the gubernatorial race. One thing we didn't talk about was the large number of undecideds. These candidates are bunched up right now. At any given time, you look at any of these polls out here, and they'll tell you that one candidate is leading over the other candidate, which probably means that we're going to be up later on primary election night. But the large number of undecideds could tip it one way or another for somebody in this race, correct?
Oh, definitely. It's definitely going to tap into the other because you got to remember right now, candidate Rinke is closing on Tudor Dixon, okay? Mm-hmm. And he's counting on those undecided votes to move in his direction. That's why he's spending late money. Tudor Dixon is actually right now leading because of the DeVos family and their investment. So that could be a very late night because the other ones are probably not going to make it. So it's between Tudor and Rinke will probably determine who will be the next governor candidate to run against Governor Whitmer.
All right, Ed Sarpolis, we will keep in touch with you leading up to the primary, and after the primary, we'll sort it all out as we get ready to head into the general with those that are victorious. We appreciate you joining us today on Spotlight. Ed Sarpolis is Executive Director of Target Insight. Have a good day.
Thank you.
And I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. Don't forget to vote on primary election day, August the 2nd. Polls don't vote, people do. Have a great day.